Zerubbabel from Luke chapter 3, Syntyche from Philippians chapter 4, Trophimus from the closing of Paul's second letter to Timothy. We've all come across names in the Bible that are extremely difficult to pronounce, much less memorize. Am I right? So what's the secret? How can it be done? Today I'm going to give you 5 tips to help you more easily memorize all the interesting names that you come across in the Bible so that, guess what? You'll actually remember them. Welcome to Bible Memory Goal. My name's Josh, and this video is actually part of a series I'm producing that tackles the most common questions that I get about memorizing scripture. What's the best way to memorize foreign names or long lists or numbers in the Bible? I promise you're going to learn a couple new techniques that you can use yourself, so be sure to subscribe to this channel and watch all the videos in this series, which I'll link to in the description as they get published. So where do we start? Well, before you can memorize something, there is one thing that you have to do first. You can't memorize something that you can't pronounce. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do is figure out how to pronounce a name that maybe looks really foreign to you, because it is foreign. These are not names that are common in modern day English. So you need to figure out probably how best to pronounce this. And there are a number of ways that you can do that. I mean, you can make up your own pronunciation if you like, but you can also go to something like BibleGateway.com where you can listen to a number of different versions or a number of different readers read out those names.
Greet Asyncritus, Phlegon, Hermes, Petrobus, Hermas, and the other brothers and sisters with them.
Or you can go even on your app. There's the YouVersion app where you can listen to those names being pronounced. So then once you listen to those names, I would write out how it sounds to you, not necessarily how it's written in the Bible. And so that way, again, you're reinforcing the pronunciation, the correct pronunciation of that particular name. Even if there's a conflict, you just need to choose which one that you prefer. Because again, this isn't about, the person has passed away for a long time, so they're not going to be offended that you haven't said their name exactly correct. But as long as we try to stay as faithful as we can, that's going to help us to be able to memorize those names when we know how they're, at least we think, they're supposed to be pronounced. The second thing you can do is turning those names into images that are able to stick in your brain a whole lot better than just the spelling or the visual look of a name when it's written down. So I just finished 2 Timothy as an example, and at the end of 2 Timothy, Paul greets a number of different people, right? We have Priscilla, Aquila, the household of Onesiphorus, and then we get into all of these weird names like Erastus, Trophimus, Eubulus, all of these people. Now, in my mind, when I'm thinking of some of these words, especially as I'm walking through the memory palace, the mind palace, which is one of the methods that I use, a lot of these names have actually been translated into images. So I'll give you a couple examples. First, Trophimus. Trophimus is actually a trophy with a mustache on it, right? I can see that right next to the 20, which is it's in verse 20 of chapter 4. So Trophimus is a trophy with a mustache on it. Similarly, in verse 21, we've got Linus, right? Linus reminds me of that Peanuts character. And so I can see Linus carrying his little blanket behind him. You've got Claudia, and I can see a cloud when I think of Claudius. The key here is to be as creative as you possibly can as you're building this image around the name. And sometimes what I've found is that it's harder to do that when you're looking at the words. So do that as you're listening to the name, because the name might bring up a phrase that sounds familiar or some kind of image so that you can associate that image with the name that you're trying to remember in the pronunciation that you want to remember it in. That's all fine and good for individual names that you have to memorize, but what if you have to memorize a whole list of names? That's where you can use a technique like an acronym. Now, we've done this when we were kids in elementary school, trying to learn all of the planets in our solar system in order. You can remember that my very educated mother just served us noodles. So that's Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, just served at Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, just served us noodles. So that's what allows me to remember all of those planets in order. You could do the same thing for names and try to figure out, if you put the first letters of each of those names in order, what does it look like, or what other sentence or phrase can you create out of that? So I'll give you an example here. At the end of 2 Timothy, we've got Eubulus, we've got Pudens, that's what I call them, Pudens, Linus and Claudia. So that could be EPLC. I could look at that word and say, oh, that looks very close to epic, right? Except it's so epic that you lose part of the I. So that's Eubulus, Pudens, Linus, Claudia, epic. Or you could say that the EPLC stands for Every Person Loves Chocolate, right? And in that particular section of scripture, you could look at everybody eating chocolate. Every person loves chocolate. Eubulus, Pudens, Linus, Claudia. You can create these acronyms. Be as creative as you like. Create your own phrase. It just has to be something that you'll remember, that can stick in your brain. Or sometimes, if you're really lucky, it will create a word, kind of like that epic that I was telling you about, that might look similar to something that you can also remember. And again, create a story around. So if you're wanting to create a list of names, memorize that list of names, look at it as an acronym. Put all of those first letters together and see what you can come up with. You might be surprised, who knows? There are quite a few people in our community that love to use songs to memorize scripture. And a lot of times that helps when it comes to memorizing names. Why? Well, because song helps us with syllables. And syllables are often one of the things that makes us forget a name. Is it Onesiphus or Onesiphorus? That's different syllables. And if it's within a song, it'll help you remember which one it is. To give you an example of what this would sound like, here's Mary, one of our community members, who's singing through Romans 16.
Greet my kinsmen Herodians, greet those in the Lord who belong to the family of Narcissus, greet those workers in the Lord, Tryphena and Tryphosa.
Now, before you say anything, let me stop you right there. I know you may not be talented enough to write your own song, and that's okay. But you can jump onto YouTube and search the passage that you're wanting to memorize along with the word song to find many other people who have already written these songs out for you. It's a lot easier than you think, and I bet you'll find what you're looking for. This last tip is less of a technique and more of a reminder to all of us that no matter what method you're using for memorization, rote, meaning doing it over and over and over again, is going to be a critical part of making sure that you remember what you've memorized. Whether it's a song, whether it's an acronym, whether it's an image that you've used to help you remember that name, you've got to go over that again and again in a review process that will help move something from a short-term memory to your long-term memory. Because the last thing that I want is to continually have to think about a trophy with a mustache. I want to be able to say 2 Timothy chapter 4 so many times that it just rolls off my tongue and I no longer have to use these memory techniques. Before I go any further, I'd like to say a special thank you to the members of our community who helped me develop this idea and the techniques that you just learned. Thank you guys all so much for sharing your own methods. It was just inspiring and really helpful to me. By the way, you're welcome to join us in our online community if you'd like. It's free, it's encouraging, and it's just a great place to meet others who value scripture memory just like you do. So now that you've learned how to memorize biblical names, why don't you give this video a like and then click here to learn another great method to increase the speed and efficacy of your memorization.